Call to order the Historic Preservation Commission regular meeting Monday, January 6, 2020 at 5:30 PM. Call to order and a roll call.
James Hensley, absent. Aaron Brown,
Here.
Patrick Kerr,
Here.
Valerie Duncan,
Here.
Adam Ropp, I think he's on his way, Lynn Bilodeau,
Here.
and Joe Chappell.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum.
All right, then we have public comments, but unless you want to speak now, you can wait till your item. I imagine that's probably what you'd rather do. Item number 3 is the election of officers. Item A is nomination and election of chair. I've had a conversation with several people, and we've been through sort of a stressful time with HP and the city and working on the park and just sort of a battle of wills, I guess, something. And also, since I am the liaison between planning and this board, I do not want to continue as chair. I think that maybe we could move forward with a renewed sense of trust and maybe just try to start working together and then instead of butting heads. With that being said, I would like to nominate Lynn Bilodeau as our chair. If I can get a second.
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, is that you, Valerie? Okay. All right.
Lynn, is this something you'd be interested in doing? Or
Yeah, we
Joe
sort of
talked
need
me
to find
about
out if he'll
this.
do
It's
it.
not taken completely by surprise. I told him I had no plans to seek chairship, but that if the board so wanted, I would be willing to serve. I'm humbled and honored. I think Aaron's probably way more qualified than I am.
well, I've already served
I know.
a term and a half because I took over when Ed Wood left to go sit on the city council. So I've served a term and a half as chair, and then Joe took over. So I'd like to.
And her expertise isn't going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
So I'd like to see somebody else take a turn, especially in the light of the antagonistic relationship that we have had recently with city and other people, that maybe it would be, I think you would be a really great
Well, I
leader.
appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we have a first and a second.
All right, roll call. Let's see. Aaron Brown,
Yes.
Patrick Kerr,
Sure.
Valerie Duncan,
Yes.
Joe Chappell,
Yes.
Lynn Bilodeau.
I'll abstain.
Okay, kind of figured you might, but had to call. So that would be oh,
Oh, you would just come in right
Yes.
and mess everything.
would you be in agreement of the nomination of Lynn Bilodeau for election of chair?
I nominated him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Aaron seconded.
He's
All
okay.
He's okay.
Just okay?
He's all right. Yeah.
All right, so it passes with 5 votes, 1 abstention.
And now, doesn't he get to continue as chair?
Oh, you can go ahead and do this meeting. Well, I'll take over.
Probably technically, but if he wants you to continue, that's fine. We'll bring him in fresh for the next one. But we do have the vice chair next.
All right. And Lynn was our vice chair, wasn't he?
I believe so, yes.
Well, then I'd like to nominate Erin as the vice chair since she has experience doing it.
Yeah, I'm happy doing that.
And then if Lynn can't be here,
I
you
would-
could
I would
conduct the
second-
meeting.
I would second that nomination.
Okay, so motion by Chappell, second by Bilodeau. Any other nominations or anything? Nope, okay. So Aaron Brown?
I'm going to vote for myself, yes.
Okay.
Yes, do it.
Patrick Kerr?
Melody.
Valerie Duncan?
Yes.
Adam Ropp?
Yes.
Lynn Bilodeau?
Yes.
Joe Chappell?
Yes. That's
All
what they
right.
call women empowering women, isn't it?
Yeah, man, amplification.
All right, so we have our vice chair and,
Bring it
or
down.
chair and
Sorry,
vice
I'm
chair.
currently-
Perfect.
Bring it down.
Bring yours down.
I thought that was Aaron telling me I was too loud.
All right. Did we do that? Did I vote yes? I don't.
Yes.
Yeah, see, it's time I move on as chair. Okay. Item 4, approval of previous minutes from the regular meeting on December 2nd, 2019.
I'll vote to approve. I don't see any problems with it.
Second.
Second for Graham. All right. Joe Chappell,
Yes.
Valerie Duncan,
Yes.
Adam Ropp,
Yes.
Lynn Bilodeau,
Yes.
Aaron Brown,
Yes.
Patrick Kerr.
Yes.
All right. 6-0.
Right. Item number 5 is HPC application 19-028. Discussion and potential action on a request for the approval of a minimum maintenance plan for a building located at 202 West Harrison. Staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Per our code, section 13, there's a section in there that has minimum maintenance requirements. There's a couple criteria in there that if there's issue with the exterior, whether it's windows, brick, et cetera, the owners are required to maintain it. If not, then the city can send a notice and basically require them to maintain it or bring it up. But part of that process is also to bring a minimum maintenance plan to the commission for approval in that, and then go from there. In this case, it came to staff's attention back in September. We tried working with the owner to get things kind of taken care of before it went to a more formal process. As things did not progress as we felt would be appropriate, we did take the formal step to where we sent a letter per our ordinance to the owner stating that he had to have a minimum maintenance plan submitted, as well as then approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. So you have pictures there. The main thing is on the front facade, there is brickwork that has fallen, as well as has some cracks in it that obviously need to be addressed. And that is the primary concern at this point with the building, is getting that part taken care of. The owner in his plan did also explain some of the previous work that had been done on the building and updates for windows and other stuff. But like I said, the main concern, and the one that the letter was sent in response to, is the facade and the brick. And again, you were provided pictures. Staff would just like to say that the minimum maintenance plan, again, was just more or less an overview. There really wasn't much information in there as to what was going to be done, timeframes that it was going to be done. And at this point, we don't even have a determination or anything that would say it was a structural issue or not. So staff feels that if you would approve the plan, you would need to make sure with certainty that timeframes are determined for each task at hand, because once again, we can't enforce a plan if we don't have actual dates to go by and enforce. Staff would recommend a final project be done by the end of February. Again, the owner has had plenty of time to get this taken care of. This has been since last September, so it's not like it's just all of a sudden happening. Another thing that we would recommend that would be part of it is that a letter or some type of stamp from a structural engineer be submitted to determine whether or not there are structural issues. And then finally, some type of design or pictorial plans also be submitted to ensure that the repair is going to match, or that, again, it's going to fit in with what's already there. So with that, I'll leave it back to the commission. Obviously, the building owner himself is in the audience, so he would be able to go over this with you and answer any and all questions you may have. But at this point, I'll give it back to the commission if you have any questions for me.
Go ahead and step up. Introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Larry Ladd, and I'm the building owner. I'd like to give a little bit of insight onto the timing of this issue, though. We noticed the problem in September as well, and we started to address it with a mason in town, Billy Lord. And then we got the letter late in September, was around September 24th or something like that. It was dated, so we received it like the 26th. So September makes it sound like it was a long time ago. It was almost in October. And so then we met with Bill Darby. We started speaking with him, and he felt it would be good to walk with some of the people from the city. And so as we walked through, our plan got in question of just going in and taking down the damaged bricks and reinstalling them. And we wondered whether or not it was structural. Again, those were questions that the city had presented, and so I looked into it. And so that took several weeks to get people out. As a matter of fact, I had a guy from Toronto come down. I reached out to people in other countries. Like, I did a lot of research. Because all of a sudden now we were questioning whether the whole building was going to come down, or is it just the facade issue. So finally we found out, no, everybody came back saying it was just a facade issue. We got Acme Bricks to come out, which was difficult because of the timing. And it was just before Thanksgiving. We received it, actually, we got back from Thanksgiving. We were told to stop doing that. As a matter of fact, we got a phone call too stating, don't do anything on the building until now. You need to get an approval, which that's what we're doing now. So we really only had from October to Thanksgiving to get it done. And again, we were talking to structural engineers and all kinds of things. The mention of structural engineers sounds good, but when I looked into it, it's $5,000 to $10,000 to get a stamped structural engineer to put their name on it, because it's a liability issue. Everyone from Acme Brick to the construction companies I spoke with say it's not structural, it's a facade issue. Every mason I've spoken to says it's a facade issue, it's not a structural issue. So to be penalized $5,000 to $10,000 just to prove it's not a structural issue would be sharp. We tried to reach out to people from from Thanksgiving to Christmas. It was very difficult. And just like we predicted, right after Christmas, everybody started calling us back, and I had a lot of effectiveness. And I think I addressed that in the letter. Acme gave us 9 different people. Out of the 9, I called different people, and it narrowed it down to 3, which were like kind of the pick of the litter. And then by speaking with them, we narrowed it down to 2. Of the 2, one was supposed to give me a letter today, and they didn't. The other one did. I really like Chip Hansen. He's a Guthrie resident. They own Hansen Masonry and a lot of years in business. I feel comfortable with him, but he wasn't able to get me the letter on time. The other one is Kinnaman. I think I'm saying his name right, Kinnaman Construction. And I spoke with Terry, and I do have a letter I can give you that he was able to email me in time. He didn't give me pricing, but he did mention. But he did mention it's non-structural in his professional opinion. I could get you other people that say, because I had a unanimous voice from everybody from Acme to the guys that was. Again, it's hard for somebody to stake their liability on it. But he in that outlines what he suggests the repair would be and what it takes. He says 20 days. That's business days, not weekends, holidays, and bad weather days. And then there is, I don't have a quote yet, so I would like to see both of them and be able to pick between the two, but
Could you give just a summary of what the feedback that you got from these people on how to address the issue?
yes.
Right, but
well,
we're not,
no.
we're on camera, so we want
Oh,
to make sure that
okay.
other people that are watching the thing kind of know
Sure.
what's going on.
Well, in the letter's a little difficult to read, so I'll kind of walk you through too, and it'll make sense. The first thing that they do is there's what the pillar does. It is primarily facade, but just to make sure, they're going to shore up the window that's to the side of the pillar, just to make sure that nothing else falls. And then what they'll do is take the bricks down. One thing we were told was to brace with strapping the current bricks so that they wouldn't fall, and we did that, but it's not permanent. It just keeps further damage to the bricks. So that's been done, but they'll take that down, and they'll take all that damaged brick. I think you guys have pictures in front of you. I apologize, I tried to print out more. But they'll take that all the way down to, and any broken bricks or missing bricks then would be replaced, and they'll build it back up. When they take it down, they'll know a lot more what the internal structures of that column is. They said there's several different ways it could have been built. The way it's holding, they think it was a structural column all the way through and tied all the way. They basically said it would have tipped if it was structural. And so they feel confident that it will come down that way. He did give me, I think it's reflected in the letter because I was pretty clear on, look, if in doubt, I want you to pump the brakes, call me, and we'll get an engineer in here. And he reflects that in the letter, that if as they're doing the investigation, if it seems structural at all, they'll cease and desist and get more ice on the project and be able to get that approved. And I also told them that, it's the front teeth of that building, so I want it to look right. And so they'll give me the approval, which I could also give, probably, I don't want to wait 60 days for the approval. Already I'm pushing it back past my comfort zone to fix it. But maybe what we can do is, up to you guys, but if there was a point person that I could get to give the approval nod of, yeah, those look good. Because I didn't want them just to rebuild it and have myself or you guys not like the way it appeared. There are the biggest concern are some of the trim bricks. The rectangular bricks are fairly simple because there's lots of used bricks, and so color matching is very possible, and you can always cut them down. I asked if there's a weather issue when you cut down bricks or anything, and they said no. There are a few decorative bricks along the edge. Those are a greater concern because to mold new bricks, there's a lot of trial and error, and the only color they use now is a really deep red, which really wasn't used on our building, so the color match would be off. So they're suggesting molding bricks, a replacement brick for it. They said actually you would get the best color match with probably painting those, not a whole area, but just individual bricks. I said, well, that's against town site to paint. They said we can stain them, but honestly, stain fades. And so to get a color match and a look match is a difficult thing. So those are the biggest problems. We're missing, I would guess, maybe 5 or 6 bricks. So, again, when it's looking really buggy at you like it is now, people notice it. Honestly, it's 20 feet off the deck. It's right at the bottom of the second floor, which is about 16 feet, I guess, off the deck, and kind of across the moat. I think most people won't notice it if they, I just would like to get it matched as well as we can, but understand it's, we're trying to match 100-year-old brick technology.
Some of the things that I, for specifically interior stuff, like with crown molding, instead of doing tin work like they used to in the Carnegie Library, they've put up what's basically styrofoam or plaster that is exactly the same shape and it's painted to match. If for some of these like molding bricks, if the structure is just a plain brick with a fascia of like a styrofoam or plaster molding that would be painted to match. Is that possible?
I think that's what they're kind of saying, that they'd mold that trim.
Okay.
The trim is very non-structural, like,
Right.
you know, yeah, because it is all on the outside. But
And it's
I
under
think
the
that's
E-
what they're talking about. But the concern is that, my concern was that it's a painted brick. We do have, like, even some of my buildings are painted. The whole Victor at one point was like
Steel gray.
silver.
That
Yeah.
was Battleship silver, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty horrific. Well, somehow they did get the silver off. Who knows? I'm sure it wasn't a very EPA project, safe project. But the building next to it, the Elks that we also own, they just painted over that, and so it's painted to look like bricks. I think Anna Coffin's pet hospital is painted to look like bricks. So it works, but I do realize, you know, you got to get up there and touch it up every. You know, I am creating a situation where I'll have to get up there and paint it every once in a while. So, but I do think it would match. I agree with you. When they started talking about it, it seemed the better of the two systems than having a red brick. And when they walked through that process, they said it's, when you make the brick to spec, you make it bigger. And then when it shrinks down, you hope you hit your mark.
Yeah.
And yeah, they described the process, and it's pretty horrific, and it's pretty long. Like, it would have been a couple months to get a finished product.
Okay.
Have you made the decision to use the company that wrote this letter?
I haven't seen prices from either one. I feel very comfortable with both, so it really gets, if they're watching, it really gets down to whoever's got the better price. I really like both of them.
You've eliminated one of these? Hanson, CIA, and Kinnaman?
Yes, and really, it was that I didn't want to overtax people. Hanson, Chip came immediately out, was a super good guy. I like that he was local, very passionate about, we spoke more about how cool Guthrie was than almost the project. And I mean, he spent a significant amount of time with me, and I felt like he was very passionate about the project, so I think he would do a really good job. Again, if the dentist was like redoing my front teeth, I'd want him to do a really good job. So I felt very comfortable with him. Again, I haven't seen his prices, and he didn't explain his exact process yet. Kim and Mon was a really neat two guys too. They came out, good experience, good questions, good solutions to the problems. He had mentioned, as a matter of fact, I forgot to mention this too. They said they've seen this problem before, and it was, they said in masonry work 100 years ago, they didn't think much about water. And he said today it's a ton, that every concept is what are you doing with water? And as a matter of fact, they even told me about a project they did where they spent more on getting rid of the water than they did the brickwork. And the problem with this is all the water goes down and hits the top of that pillar, and even though it's only about 4 inches, you get 100 years of that. It worked its way behind, and then the freezing and expansion. The property was bank owned for a while too, and you actually see there's Pete and Donna Cole back in '82 had to patch it already. Like, they kind of glued it back together with, just pointed it, and now it's cracked again. And they said if we go in and just fix it and address it, somebody's going to be out here in another 30 or 40 years to do it again. And so their suggestion is to put and they said, my concern was that somebody would see it, but they said they could put a metal flashing on top of that. And they said, you'll have to get eyes on it every 50 years, but you're not going to have to deal with this again. And so that was their suggestion on those pillar tops. And they also suggested we address the two. They're not in question right now, but they suggested we hit the two over the door. They looked at the entire building, and they said they want to get on those immediately.
I'd like to point out the drip fashing that was in that letter right here that he's talking about to kind of deflect the water is exactly what they've had to do. We've spent several $1 million at the Carnegie Library trying to abate our water issue. And now we're working on mold. So that is something that's a very common practice, and that's actually what we have employed at the Carnegie Library.
Yeah, and they did say that, because I talked to them, once we got down that path with those guys, I said, okay, do you spot anything else? And they said, on this, that's it, but they're going to kind of walk through my properties and do the same thing, because they said they just didn't think much about water back then.
When do you anticipate this project starting and finishing?
That's a really good question. They've been very responsive. This is all since, when was that? That was just the first of the, since the first of the year. So this has really come together quick. I think they're all excited to get on it. Right now it's like June outside, so I'm really excited for them to get started, but it is weather dependent as they start doing the work. So that's, they have to stop for weather, and we could be in ice storms in 2 weeks, who knows?
I guess one question I have is, do any of these masonry companies or
Joe.
construction companies, they have any expertise in replacing brick in historic buildings, or are these masonry companies that are bricking homes?
No, that's a really good question. This was actually the list that they gave me for this project. This was from Acme Brick. So this was, Acme Brick actually looked at the project, then they talked about it, and then they pulled together this list and sent me via the worst fax ever, their results. So they actually had a committee where they met and discussed it, and so these are the guys that they felt could do the custom work that we needed done.
So if I may ask, so they made a determination that it's not structural and they don't have a structural engineer on staff?
Are you talking about
Well, and
the
actually,
construction companies? Or, 'cause-
actually, in this letter, they say that it appears to be non-structural.
Right, but
Right.
what expertise do they have on their staff or in theirs to make that determination?
years of experience, I
That
had
doesn't work in the line of building codes and that. I mean, unless there's a structural engineer, I mean, we can't assume that somebody just is there going, yep, doesn't look structural, we're okay.
But if we talk to Acme Brick, who's an expert in brick loading and brick structures, and we
So they
talk to
must
these
have an
mason,
engineer on staff.
and these mason, I don't know, because I actually tried to get, I hunted that down. I tried to get a structural engineer to come out and give us a stamped plan, because that was what was asked for.
Right.
And that's where I was saying that we can do it. And the cheapest company said the bare minimum is $5,000 for us to
I understand, but
give a-
financial hardship is not a consideration for letting a building deteriorate. So the financial side of it really is not relevant per the code.
So, but I mean, is who's the expert saying that there's a structural issue? Because
That's the whole thing, is we don't know. And that's what I was saying,
But-
and that's why staff is recommending that an actual licensed structural engineer make a determination. If they say that it's not structural, then we're good to go, because we have somebody who's stamped or has signed off saying it is not structural. At this point, there has been no determination, and we have no expertise whatsoever to say that it's not structural.
I just handed you a letter from a masonry company that's putting his reputation on the line. I mean, you can call him and you can call Terry. I'm just asking,
In the letter, it said it appears to be non-structural.
Right.
That's sort of different than saying it's
Right.
non-structural.
okay.
That's one of those things with these companies, as you're talking with them, ask them specifically.
Oh, I did, because
Okay.
again, we pumped the brakes because there was concerns that it could be structural. So I looked heavily into this. We looked at old photos. Bill did the same thing, and he found the old photos of, it looked exactly like it does 50 years ago.
Acme-
The crack happened before, and they
Right.
glued it together with masonry.
Right.
And we sat there and went in and looked inside and outside, made sure there was no pulling separations. I had an architect from Toronto that builds huge buildings come in, and he walked through the whole building with me. I had a construction company guy walk in and look through all the whole building with me. I've had a lot of experts, and I spent a lot of time on this. It's, at some point, wouldn't every repair then have the question of whether or not it's structural? Like, I mean, where does it stop? At this point, those bricks clearly aren't holding anything. So us repairing those bricks isn't going to make the building fall down.
For instance, the architectural firm that you asked to come, they are going to have a structural engineer on staff.
They do. Now,
And
he's
so
10,000.
That is what, if you hire that architectural company or whatever to review that, you go to them and say, we would like a letter from your structural engineer, from your architectural firm, to also not just the architect that came out and spoke to you, but a letter from that structural engineer that works from that firm that verifies exactly what the architect told you.
And I understand.
That type of
And
thing.
if I
I
can.
understand that, but Tony, the architect that I'm talking about, their firm's 10,000 plus. So, and he suggested find a local firm, and that's where I was getting $5,000 plus.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about bricks that right now aren't holding a load.
No,
And
I-
we're just talking about putting those bricks back up and
But who's made that determination?
gravity. Right now, it's pulled again, it's pulled away from the building. Like, you
No,
can
yeah,
see it's not holding anything structural. Like,
No,
and I asked, I'm not making fun, I'm just, I'm trying to avoid another time where Larry Ladd gets fined $5,000, you know?
No, and we understand the cost and everything that goes along with it, but in the conversations that we've had recently with the Mineral Wells Park, is that we want to make sure that there's a landscape architect that oversees and makes sure that everything is going to work properly the way especially trained landscape engineer knows. And so this is, especially when there's building and some public safety issues involved with bricks and stuff falling out.
I think the big safety
this is
issue is
something that I think
if I can't get in there and fix it, and we're talking, you guys are putting another time delay in the project, because it was mentioned that it has been since September, but I have to correct you, it was late September. I started making movement on it. I went out and bought brand new scaffolding because I didn't want it to look bad. I had used scaffolding I could use, but I bought brand new scaffolding. I got the scaffolding erected. I talked to a mason about getting out there, and I was told by the city to wait. Then I was told by the city, let's check if it's structural. Then I was told to take the scaffolding down, so I can't even get good eyes on the project. Meanwhile, you've got other people with repairs all over town. I mean, well, no offense, but Lynn, you've got the orange protectors, that didn't come down for Victorian Walk. I want to make sure that I don't have to jump through extra hoops because I'm doing things that other people aren't doing. I just want to get it fixed. And you're talking about a $5,000 to $10,000 stamp that somebody's going to come down and go, oh, it looks okay, just so that I can get this done, and it's a vacant building.
And just so I can add, so it's fully understood, you will not be the only one that has to do this. Per our code, other similar situations such as this will be in front of the commission as well with minimum maintenance plans. And then if it appears to be in a structural issue or uncertainty, that will be a requirement that they prove to us it's not structural and that it's a facade-only type issue. And so again, it isn't just you, it will be others that are in similar situations down the road in that, and making sure we follow the code.
Wow, because, I mean, I've been and looked at most of these buildings, and I could come back with photos of every single building that has potential structural issues. And if that comes down the pike, you're talking about a town that's not flourishing right now. Like, unless you have a CBD shop or a dispensary, it's pretty hard to get someone to rent space here. And we're talking about fining every building owner $5,000 to $10,000 because it could be a structural issue. I'm not trying to be combative. I'm just trying to be realistic that potentially I could have had this fixed already, but we've pumped the brakes, and now we're going to pump the brakes again, and I'll probably have to come back and fill out I noticed there was a financial hardship form. I'll have to fill that out, and that's
You're
gonna
not
bump it up
eligible
further.
for that because it doesn't fit the criteria for an economic hardship.
Excuse me.
I guess I don't know what the.
Yeah,
I can explain it.
Well, all
to
I
you.
know
Yeah.
is that you would be taking money that we could spend making these buildings viable, and instead, we're going to give it to some architectural firm to give to their insurance company so that they could give us a rubber stamp on a piece of paper. And, you know, I can probably get some of these guys to get on the phone with you guys, but I'm just asking, I'm trying to do all I can to make Guthrie viable again. We finally got the building back. It took us years, and I don't think it did the town any favors when it was empty. And we're finally getting these properties back. We're getting the hotel opened again, and we're going to get the event center opened again, and that gets people in this town. But if instead we're chasing this, that's you know, I don't mind us all walking over there and taking a look at it. And you guys got to convince me that it's structural. I looked at it every which way. The last thing I want is the front of my building to fall off. So I'm with you guys. And that's why I agreed to look at it. And that's why I had Tony all the way from Toronto come down and look at it. And I had a guy from Nevada come up and look at it. And I called, you know, I'm talking to guys in Europe because they're dealing with 1,000-year-old buildings. And how do you keep them up? And what do they suggest? And I mean, I've really, really researched this, and I wouldn't do it if I thought it was a structural issue. And when I've had 100% of the experts say it's not a structural issue, it's a facade.
You haven't provided us with any information that says that from these experts.
If I
That's
may,
the problem.
do you have
Okay.
drawings on this building?
Pardon me?
Do you have any existing drawings on this building?
No.
None whatsoever?
Like a architectural rendering of the building?
No, construction drawings.
Construction drawings? No. We're missing a handful of bricks, and they're going to take them down and put them back up. So, no.
I have another question. Is it possible to get an external engineer that's separate from the brick companies, or will they not do it unless it comes from an internal engineer?
I tried both. I tried talking to engineering firms, and I tried talking to the,
Like just a
people
complete
through the-
separate structural engineer?
Yeah.
What would the city think about if he just got approval from a structural engineer that was separate from the company that was going to fix?
Oh, we don't care how it comes.
Oh.
I mean, honestly, whether it's a separate one, the same contracting
all of them
firm,
charge the same.
constructing firm, yeah.
Oh.
As long as it's a licensed structural engineer, we'll take from anybody.
You know, and it looks like to me, and
I-
I'm certainly no expert, but it looks like the whole south side of that building is leaning out, if you look at it. Is that just?
Bill Darby, and
illusion?
it is, Bill Darby looked at that. Because I noticed the same thing when I bought it, and he did the research too. You see it in old photos, like it's been doing that for 60 years. And that's one thing that the architect did, is we went inside and looked inside the elevator, and we looked at every single floor and made sure there's no pulling away from the building and the floor, there's no movement at all. One question that came up when I walked with people in the city was, the window kind of does a little bowing action. So we looked at older photos, and it was bowing in those. And we also looked inside and outside, and there's no movement. We painted the inside in 2002, was it, 2000? And there's no movement of it inside, there's no movement outside. So what it appears that happened was that the water got behind it, and that caused the fissure. And it could have potentially been from shaking. I don't want to say that because my insurance company is looking at it. So we're not sure. But it like literally is all on the outside, and it's coming from that fascia that sticks out and goes straight down from there. So right now you could literally pull the bricks off. They're not lifting anything up. But it's what Tony explained to me, and the other guy, the individual that I talked to through the brick company, is a structural engineer stamp it's just basically a payment to the insurance company.
I doubt that your brick is structural, very seriously. Most brick is a fascia material, and it is usually tied back to a structure, especially back in the period of time when this building was originally built. I would recommend, if you get a knowledgeable structural engineer, he's not going to charge you $5,000 just to tell you that it's non-structural. He'll probably come out and he'll probably remove a few of the bricks to see what the structure behind that fascia is, and then make his determination. So I really don't think you're looking at as much of a financial,
What if I get this guy to cross out the one word in question?
well, the city still requires that you have a licensed engineer. And,
For any repair?
Well,
Well,
again,
this-
recently, we've had a project.
I'm talking.
Go ahead.
We have earthquakes in Oklahoma. And when you have earthquakes, buildings move. And when buildings like that move, they crack. And we're in the business of protecting human lives and safety and all that stuff. It's not only to your advantage to have somebody, an expert, come in and tell you whether it's structural or non-structural. You know, you don't want bricks falling off the face of your building, hitting somebody, hurting or killing them. Then you're into a lot more than just a heavy structural fee. I would recommend that you do get a licensed structural engineer. And it doesn't have to be somebody that works for an architect or anything. It can be any licensed structural engineer and pay him whatever he wants. It's not, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be, I'm a licensed architect and I would not charge you $5,000.
Okay. Well, if you got any recommendations, I'd love to have them because I called my way through every lead I had and that was, the winner was $5,000 and I don't expect the repair to cost that. The second thing, so what do? Push this till I come back? Because then that's another 30 days. And she was even asking, when can it be done? I'd love to get these guys on
You can go
it.
to the internet to the Oklahoma State Board of Licensed Engineers, and they'll have a whole list of licensed structural engineers. There's probably 100 of them in Oklahoma City. And they have all the contact information you need. And actually find someone that's worked with the historical facades. I'm sure there's a few in the Oklahoma City area that have done so.
Okay, so far I have not found them.
can
I want to
assure
get
you,
this
they're-
repaired,
They're out there.
and I'll be,
But
you know,
I'm pretty sure you don't have a really issue with it being structural.
I don't think I do either.
I don't either.
So I don't
but
understand why I'm
again,
needing to do
not a
this.
licensed structural engineer. I'm just a
Right, no,
licensed
I understand that. But every single person that's come by has said the same thing you have. Every single mason that's an expert in this field says the same thing
understand.
you have. But no, I don't understand. So if somebody's window's falling out, do they need a structural engineer to say you can replace that window? Like, at what point are you going to make every single?
Windows aren't structural items,
Well, I'm just saying, like, so,
structural material.
okay, I'm just wondering where the line's going to be drawn. And I hope you're right. I hope it's something that a couple $100 will put to rest. But to be quite honest, in my world, $1,000 is a big fee. And when people are talking $5,000 to $10,000 for a fee, for, you know, what are we talking here? We're replacing about 10 bricks. That's a huge fee. And I guess I would, in that you don't think it's structural, you doubt it's structural, and I can get that guy to redo the letter. He wrote it today. I'll just say,
He's not a
you're,
licensed engineer.
the word probably, well,
He's still not a
okay,
licensed
so
engineer.
I guess
The
I'll be
city is
watching.
requiring you, sir,
I'm going to
get
go
a
get some
licensed
photos,
engineer.
and I'll come back with photos. I just think that we all need to meet with the same criteria, though. So if Larry Ladd has to do that for repairs, I think everybody in town needs to do this for repairs. So,
I agree with you on that.
pardon me?
I can agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's,
Everyone should have to do it. Everyone should have to do it. Sorry, Aaron.
so, hey,
Talking to the microphone so Aaron doesn't come in here and
Right,
yell
right,
at
right.
us.
If it gets any closer to my lips, I'll be eating on it.
Right.
okay.
But no, getting an engineer's and getting the professional licensed people is something that used to be stringent on the HP Commission, and there were several decades that it got real lax and it was just whatever because, you know, commissioners change on a regular basis. So this is something that we're going back to our rules and making sure that we're doing everything right in the way that we're supposed to. And so this is a requirement, and I was just looking up that SHPO, the SHPO office has a list of engineers that deal with historic properties. And then I also just looked up that it should cost you about $1,000.
Oh, okay.
But
It's still, I'm just saying,
I-
just so you guys are aware, in my world, $1,000 is still a lot of money.
Oh, it is
We're-
for me
we're
as
trying to-
well.
It's, you know, financial viability is historic preservation. So we
absolutely
need to be
is.
able to,
But also, so is safety.
no,
And so we
that's-
wanna-
and I
and we-
agree with that too. That's
yeah.
why I want to fix it.
But
But what
this
we're
is-
talking about is another delay, because I'm assuming I have to come back and then we'll do this again
Yes.
in a month.
Yeah.
So that means for a month, it's hanging out there. So I just want it
But
on
we
the
wanna
record,
make-
I would like to fix it.
And
the
we thank
city
you.
is getting pushed another.
And we thank you for that, and that's awesome, because we know that you're responsible for a lot of buildings in the downtown area, and it's awesome. But we want to make sure that we're doing everything appropriately in the way that we're supposed to.
Okay,
We don't even really have a choice.
okay.
I mean, we can all sit here and say, oh, go ahead, but if you don't have that stamp, it's nothing, it's like it's a city code and a law, it's a rule. I mean, we can't do anything about it. And I have the same things at my building too. I have to pay a licensed plumber or fire suppression system company to come in. I have to pay them like 20 grand to come in, turn a valve, and take a pipe off and put it back on.
Right.
I'm not saying,
Right.
shut up, I got it. I'm just saying, like, I understand your
But
frustration with that.
well, and at least you're getting something for it. I mean, I've had
Oh, well.
professionals who probably know, honestly, more than the structural engineer, because they work with bricks day to day, say that it's fine. And now we're paying some guy that probably doesn't know the bricks as well as the masons with, you know, I've had a lot of eyes on this thing, so probably collectively hundreds of years of experience is saying it's fine and it's a facade. And now I'm going to get a structural engineer guy that's a pencil pusher in some firm, and his job's going to be to rubber stamp something. So I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it. I'm just saying, at least you got a service for your money. I'm talking about, and again, I'm worried from both circumstances that also my asset is at risk, as is other people, for another 30 days because, you know, it's getting pushed again. And that was one of my concerns when I was told to bring it here for approval was I've got a building at risk. I want to fix it. And I was originally told I could do that it was an emergency status and that you could fix it. And then I was told I couldn't. I had to get approval. And now we're getting pushed again. And so I understand if you guys have to do it, but I just want to make sure everybody's doing it.
Amen, yeah.
Okay, so looking at staff's recommendation on this, that we approve your minimum maintenance plan with the following conditions. That we have timeframes needed to be determined and set up for each step and task. And honestly, in looking at the plan, I don't have a good understanding.
Joe, talking to your microphone.
You got in trouble again.
We're really doing a bad job with these microphones tonight.
We need lapel.
Anyway, I don't really see the plan.
Correct.
Am I missing it?
No, there wasn't one.
There doesn't seem like there's a plan permitted.
Well, if I have to come back, I can come back, because now we have the time frame. I didn't have the time frame, but when I wrote that.
You
So
can
now-
come back, if the commission would give you a 30-day extension. That is possible through the code. They could determine that you come back with more information in that, but it would be up to the commission.
Okay.
Well, I will,
And I will just, as point of reference, and this is just what we're reading, the city thinks you had plenty of time to do this. I mean, that's what they're telling us. That whether it was September or October, at least to have a plan, and we still don't have a plan.
I wasn't told I needed a plan until Thanksgiving, and between Thanksgiving and Christmas is when I was trying to get.
And I'm just sharing with you
Yeah.
what we got here.
No,
So
I
you-
understand, I understand, but I'm just saying that I didn't get calls back until, everybody's response was, we'll handle it when we get back from the
Well,
holidays.
and I don't know how everybody else feels, but if you come back, if we grant you 30 days, and you come back, and you've got proof that it's non-structural from an engineer, and then you have dates, so that, because that, one of our requests is that the city wants dates,
Yeah, and-
so.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, because what I had envisioned is a time frame to actually have a contractor hired, some date, whatever it be week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. And then based on that contractor's hiring, he should have a schedule of what he's going to do and the timeframes it's going to take. And then that would become part of the plan. So again, he's going to start on X day, have the different tasks, a rough idea of what those tasks are going to take, and once again, have a time frame that would be complete. And so we could have that in the plan, and then that would be our time frame. The other thing we're still going to need is some type of pictorial or design, a site plan or a building elevation or something to that effect to show that what's being replaced is going to mimic or, again, have the appearance of what was there previously in that. The other thing I just want you to keep in mind is per the code and per the Secretary of Interior's rehabilitation standards, if at all possible, the exact materials that are there are to be utilized. If you're going to go down a different road to have what I would call fake bricks, that is going to have some documentation and some substantial documentation to show that what's going to be done is going to, again, meet what was there previously. Because you can't just start throwing stuff that isn't the original materials or materials of that era without some substantial documentation.
So we're gonna
That's
need-
all code.
So we're going to need some pictures.
Yep. And that was my condition number 3, the design or pictorial plans be submitted.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to want number 3 too, Larry.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to want that.
And again, if, again, it'll be at the commission's determination, desire, if they want to then allow you to have that extension to have it for the next commission meeting in February.
Anybody?
What was your question, like, what's going to be the additional time frame because of
Well,
now
I mean,
having to get an engineer?
No, I was just wanting to make the point that when he came back, that, and I think Dan sort of explained that if there was someone hired and there were goal dates, that just having a plan with times on it is what I was talking about.
Because staff fully understands that if weather is involved, that,
Sure.
again, it's a day or two later than a certain date because of weather. We're not going to be out there, hammering per se, but again,
And
we
just-
need some generalized time frames because otherwise there's no plan and no way to enforce anything.
Well, and just like you talked about, 2 to, 6 weeks to find the right color of brick.
If they
those-
mold it, yeah.
Those kind of things, but those,
Well, given the building, and, I mean, this is not like eye level, this is way up in the air. And I would move that we give Larry a 30-day extension.
to come up with the plan,
up with
not to have it done.
Thank you.
I think
going, he's-
it would be horribly unfair not to grant him an extension, so that's my motion.
I second it.
Okay.
I second it.
Good.
So we're granting the extension.
Well, we haven't
We
voted
need to
yet.
vote.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but we have a
That's
motion
the
and a second.
motion.
With with the understanding that when he comes back, we will have a plan
Right,
that
Yeah.
has dates.
correct. And especially a plan that encompasses the 3 points in the staff recommendation there. And you have a copy of that, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay. Something that encompasses that, so.
So in February, are we expecting to have that stamp from the engineer?
I don't know if we have to have it stamped by then, but he
Right.
has to have a plan to bring an engineer in to look at it.
Right.
And,
Okay.
and if that includes, I think, Larry, you mentioned that one of the, and I want to work with you the best that I
Thank you.
can. This is just a tough deal.
Yeah.
But Larry mentioned that one of the masons said, we can start removing some bricks, and if we see some structural problems, well, before he hires the engineer to come out here, the plan may be, I want one of the masons to go up there and remove some of the bricks. So the engineer has a way to look in and see if it's structural without having to do some kind of weird seismic testing or tape testing or all the things that engineers like to do on buildings. If it's something that can be uncovered so that then the engineer can take a look in and say, sure, this isn't structural.
The other thing that might be beneficial too is that would allow them to gather a couple of those, you have photos of it, so you see that top edge that is about to tumble. It might not be a bad idea. Again, I'm not a mason, so I'm stepping out of my realm. But if we took those, it would keep them from falling, but it would also get us the samples where maybe when I come in, we'd have samples of what it would look like.
And if that's the plan that you and your mason come up with, that's the plan you bring back to us.
Okay.
And just like you said, if there is, obviously, if he's up there and he pulls 3 bricks out and there's a 4th one teetering, we don't want him to leave the 4th one over there teetering. I mean, do what you need to do.
Well, and one thing I ran into a problem even with these guys is they asked, well, when do you want us to start? And I go, well, I have to present it, then it has to be approved. Then I have to look at the prices, then I want you to start. So it's, but he definitely like already gave a timeline, and I know what you're asking for. And I did take notes, so I'll
Okay.
come with all the appropriate. And now I do have a question, just because, is it helpful for you guys? We're saying potentially 30 days. I know it still has to be voted on. But when do I get it to you guys so you can get eyes on it before the meeting?
I will get with you on that because it will be earlier than 30 days.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I assumed.
Because it'll be about a week before the next meeting.
Okay,
Roughly,
that-
but I'll get with you on that.
That'd be perfect.
Dan
Okay.
loves to work overtime and do stuff late, but
True.
he doesn't want you to
Yeah.
give it to him Friday
Right.
for a Monday meeting.
He just likes meeting
He
with
doesn't
us.
like it that much.
Okay, so we have a motion and
Motion
a
and a second.
second,
Yep.
so we need to vote.
All right. Joe Chappell,
Yes.
Aaron Brown,
Yes.
Patrick Kerr,
Yes.
Valerie Duncan,
Yes.
Adam Robb,
Yes.
Lynn Bilodeau.
Yes.
All right, so 30-day extension passes 6-0.
All right. Well, thank you. I owe you all coffee. I'm sorry I got intense.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I know he'll at least take me up
Yeah, I'll
on it.
take it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any staff comments?
None.
Any commissioner comments? Come on, folks. Have we got anything?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
He's got a second.
We usually don't even vote on that. Joe usually just cuts us loose.
There you go.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
We are adjourned.
We are adjourned.